I stood frozen in my childhood kitchen, the familiar yellow walls suddenly feeling like they were closing in around me. My father, his face contorted with rage I had never seen before, jabbed his finger in my direction. "Return the $98,000 or don't come back," he shouted, spittle flying from his lips. My sister Amanda smirked from behind him. "You took Mom's money." "We all know," she added, her voice dripping with venom. Instead of defending myself, I reached into my purse, pulled out a stack of bank teller slips, and placed them on the counter slowly. As they leaned forward to look, their faces went pale. 3 months ago, my mother died after a lengthy battle with cancer, leaving behind a crater in my heart that felt impossible to fill. Mom and I had always been close, but in a complicated way. She showered my older sister Amanda with open affection, but with me it was always different, quieter, more reserved, yet somehow deeper. "Blythe, promise me you'll come home after I'm gone," Mom had said during our last phone call. "There are things you'll need to handle." I didn't realize then what she meant. I had built a successful life for myself in Chicago as an accountant, far away from our small town of Westbrook, Maine. I rarely came home anymore. Not because I didn't love my family, but because every visit felt like stepping backward into a role I had outgrown, the less favored daughter, the one who always tried too hard. My father, Harold, had always been emotionally distant, quick to judge, and somehow always taking Amanda's side. At 62, he looked older than his years, his shoulders permanently stooped from decades working at the paper mill before it closed. Amanda, 35 and married with 2 kids, never left Westbrook, teaching history at the local high school and building her life just 3 streets away from our parents. When I returned for the funeral, something felt off. Dad barely looked at me, and Amanda kept whispering to him whenever I entered a room. I chalked it up to grief. We all process loss differently. "How long are you staying?" Amanda asked the day after the funeral, not bothering to hide her impatience. "As long as it takes," I replied. "Mom asked me to help settle her affairs." Amanda's eyes narrowed. "Dad and I have it handled." But I stayed anyway, renting a small apartment downtown. I spent my days sorting through Mom's belongings, finding small treasures, her recipe box, the earrings she wore on special occasions, photos I had never seen before. In her closet, I found a shoebox filled with every birthday card I had ever sent her. 2 weeks into my stay, I decided to ask about Mom's estate. I knew she had a life insurance policy, and there should have been some savings. At 31, I didn't need the money, but I wanted to make sure everything was being handled properly. It was, after all, what I did for a living. "Dad, do you want to go through Mom's financial paperwork together?" I asked one evening when I stopped by the house. His reaction was unexpected. His face flushed crimson, and he slammed his coffee mug down so hard I thought it might crack. "Why? What are you after?" "Nothing. I just want to help." That's when Amanda walked in from the kitchen. "Help yourself to Mom's money, you mean?" I was stunned. "What are you talking about?" That's when Dad exploded, pointing at me, demanding I return money I had never taken. When I placed the bank teller slips on the counter documents I had requested from the bank that morning because something about this whole situation felt wrong, their faces transformed from righteous anger to shock. The slips clearly showed Amanda's signature on 8 separate withdrawals from Mom's account over the past 6 months, totaling $98,000. Money that, according to the dates, had been taken while Mom was still alive but increasingly debilitated by her illness. The Hampton Inn in downtown Westbrook wasn't exactly the Ritz, but it had become my temporary home after the confrontation. I sat cross-legged on the bed, surrounded by financial statements, bank records, and legal documents. My accounting background was proving useful in ways I never anticipated. "You have 24 hours to leave town," Dad had said as I walked out of the house yesterday, his voice quiet but threatening. "I won't have you turning sister against sister." But I wasn't going anywhere. Something much bigger was happening, and I needed to understand what. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. "You've always been jealous of me. Leave it alone." I ignored it and continued my methodical investigation. The bank statements told a disturbing story. For years, Mom's accounts had shown regular activity, normal expenses, occasional splurges, nothing unusual. Then, about a year ago, larger withdrawals began. 5,000 here, $8,000 there. Always in cash, always signed by Amanda. I called Terry Johnson, the manager at First Main Community Bank. Mom had mentioned him in the past. Miss Andrews, I really shouldn't be discussing your mother's accounts without proper authorization, he said when I visited him the next morning. I understand, but I'm trying to settle her estate. There seem to be some irregularities. Terry sighed, glancing around the empty office. Your mother came to me about 8 months ago. She was concerned about some withdrawals. I explained that they were authorized. Your sister had power of attorney. Power of attorney? Since when? Since last year. Your mother signed the paperwork right here. She seemed surprised when I told her. Said she must have forgotten. Terry's expression grew troubled. I suggested she revoke it if she was concerned, but she never did. As I left the bank, I nearly collided with Jackson, Amanda's husband. He was a tall, awkward man who worked as an engineer at the water treatment plant. We had always gotten along well enough. Blythe, he said, startled. I heard you were in town. Jackson, I acknowledged, noticing how he avoided making eye contact. Everything okay? Sure. Just, tough times with Eleanor passing. He shifted uncomfortably. Amanda's taking it hard. I bet she is, I replied, watching his reaction carefully. $98,000 hard, apparently. Jackson's face flushed. I should go, he mumbled, hurrying past me. That afternoon I ran into Ryan Cooper at the local coffee shop. We had been close in high school before drifting apart when I left for college. He had stayed in Westbrook, becoming a lawyer at one of the few firms in town. Blythe Andrews? He said, his familiar smile bringing unexpected comfort. I heard about your mom. I'm really sorry. We caught up over coffee, the conversation flowing easily despite the years between us. When I mentioned I was staying to settle Mom's estate, his expression turned serious. Actually, I might be able to help with that. I specialize in estate law now. Really? I felt a surge of hope. I could use some legal advice. Ryan agreed to look into things unofficially. 2 days later, he called with disturbing news. Blythe, your mother changed her will 6 months ago. She left everything to your father and Amanda. You were completely cut out. My stomach dropped. That doesn't make sense. Mom would never do that. There's more, Ryan continued. The attorney who handled the change, James Patterson, isn't someone I know well, but he has a reputation for being flexible with documentation requirements. I thanked Ryan and immediately began researching James Patterson. His office was in Portland, about 20 minutes away. I also dug deeper into Amanda's finances, calling in favors from colleagues in Chicago who had access to certain databases. What I discovered shocked me. Amanda had a gambling problem. Credit card statements showed regular charges at casinos in Connecticut and online gambling sites. She and Jackson were drowning in debt, second mortgage, maxed out credit cards, personal loans. The next day, I visited Mom's doctor, Dr. Sarah Goldstein. She was hesitant to share details until I mentioned my concerns about Mom's state of mind during her final months. Your mother was on very strong pain medication, Dr. Goldstein finally admitted. There were days when she was certainly not capable of making major decisions. I noted that in her chart several times, especially after your sister brought her in to sign some paperwork. I questioned the timing, but your sister insisted your mother had requested it. The pieces were falling into place. Amanda had exploited Mom's condition, obtained power of attorney, systematically drained her accounts, and then changed her will. All while Mom was sick and vulnerable. As I walked back to my hotel, I realized this was much worse than I initially thought. This wasn't just about money, this was about betrayal at the deepest level. We need to talk. I stood in the empty corridor outside Amanda's classroom. The final bell had rung 20 minutes ago, and the hallway echoed with that distinct empty school silence. Amanda glanced up from the papers she was grading, her expression hardening when she saw me. I have nothing to say to you. Really? Because I have quite a lot to say to you. I closed the classroom door and took a seat across from her desk. Like how you stole $98,000 from Mom while she was dying. Or how you had her change her will when she was heavily medicated. Amanda's pen clattered to the desk. For a moment, her carefully constructed facade cracked. revealing something I rarely saw in my confident, always put-together sister. Fear. "You don't understand anything," she whispered. "Then help me understand, Amanda. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you took advantage of our dying mother." She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking. When she looked up, her eyes were red but dry. "I didn't take all of it, okay? Mom's treatments weren't fully covered by insurance. Do you have any idea how expensive experimental cancer treatments are?" "Don't lie to me," I said, keeping my voice level. "I've seen the medical bills. Insurance covered 80%. The 20% was still thousands of dollars. And there were other expenses. Like your gambling debts?" I interrupted. Amanda went pale. "How did you?" "I'm an accountant, Amanda. Following money is what I do." She stood abruptly, pacing the small classroom. "Fine. I took some money. I needed it. Jackson and I are underwater, and the bank was threatening foreclosure." Her eyes flashed. "But I didn't change Mom's will. That was all her." I didn't believe her, but arguing would get me nowhere. "I want the truth, Amanda. All of it. And I want what's fair from Mom's estate." "There's nothing left," she said, her voice hollow. "The money's gone, and the house goes to Dad. The will is legal, even if you don't like it." I left the school feeling frustrated but determined. Amanda was lying, I just didn't know about which parts. Back at my hotel, I called Dad again. He'd been screening my calls since our confrontation. "What?" he answered gruffly. "Dad, we need to talk about Mom's estate. There are serious issues. The only issue is you causing trouble. Your mother made her wishes clear." "When she was drugged and not thinking clearly?" I protested. "That's a lie," he snapped. "Your sister took care of your mother. Where were you?" "Off in Chicago with your fancy job, too busy to visit more than once a year." The guilt stung, but I pushed through it. "Dad, Amanda stole money from Mom. That's a fact. Your mother gave her that money for all she did. Now leave it alone, Blythe. I mean it." He hung up, leaving me fuming. I was being painted as the villain for asking questions about obvious financial fraud and elder abuse. That night, I decided to visit my childhood home while everyone was out. Dad had his weekly poker game, and Amanda would be at her son's baseball practice. I still had my key, and I needed to look for more evidence. The house felt different without Mom, colder, emptier. I went straight to her bedroom, which looked untouched since her death. I searched methodically through drawers, closets, and boxes, looking for anything that might help me understand what had happened. In the back of her closet, behind a row of winter coats, I found a small wooden box I'd never seen before. Inside was a leather-bound diary and a USB drive. I took both and continued searching. Under the loose floorboard in her room, our old childhood hiding spot, I found a manila envelope containing bank statements, property deeds, and a handwritten note. "For Blythe, if anything happens, look deeper." My hands trembled as I opened the diary and began reading. Mom's elegant handwriting filled page after page with thoughts, fears, and secrets. Many entries were about me and Amanda, her hopes for us both. But as I read further, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. "Harold insists I keep sending money." One entry from 2 years ago read, "He says if I don't, he'll tell the children everything. I can't bear for them to know, especially Blythe. She idolizes him despite his distance. How could I tell her the truth? That the man she calls father has been living a double life for 20 years? I stared at the words, trying to make sense of them. A double life? What did that mean? My phone rang, startling me. It was a number I didn't recognize. "Is this Blythe Andrews?" a woman's voice asked. "Yes. Who's this?" "My name is Valerie Jensen. I was your mother's home care nurse during her last months." She paused. "We need to talk. There are things you should know about your mother's final days, things that didn't seem right. Can we meet?" The small diner on the outskirts of town was nearly empty at 10 in the morning. Valerie Jensen sat across from me, stirring her coffee absently. She was younger than I expected, maybe in her early 40s, with kind eyes and worry lines etched across her forehead. "I could lose my job for this," she said quietly. "But your mother was special to me. We spent a lot of time together, and she talked about you constantly." About me? This surprised me. Not Amanda? Valerie smiled sadly. She loved both her daughters, but she worried about you more. Said you were like her, too trusting, too willing to see the good in people. I thought about Mom's diary entries and swallowed hard. What did you want to tell me, Valerie? She leaned forward. Your father and sister controlled who visited your mother, when she took her medication, everything. There were days when they'd give her extra pain medication before certain visitors arrived, particularly when lawyers or bank people came. She'd be completely out of it, signing papers she couldn't possibly understand. My suspicions confirmed. I felt a surge of anger. That's elder abuse. I know. I reported my concerns to my supervisor, but your father convinced everyone I was overstepping. They reassigned me, but I kept in touch with your mother secretly. Valerie hesitated. There's something else. Your father would often take phone calls outside, arguing with someone. Once I overheard him saying he couldn't send more money, that Eleanor's accounts were being watched now. This aligned with what I'd found in Mom's diary. Did my mother ever mention another family? Or my father having relationships outside their marriage? Valerie nodded slowly. Near the end, when the medication made her less guarded, she mentioned something about his other family in Millfield. Said she'd been paying for his mistakes for years. Millfield was just 30 minutes away. I thanked Valerie, promising to stay in touch, and drove straight there with a sense of purpose. Millfield was smaller than Westbrook, the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. I started at the local coffee shop, showing the barista a recent photo of my father from my phone. Oh yeah, Harold comes in every Thursday, she said cheerfully. Always gets a large black coffee and a cinnamon roll. For himself and his daughter. Daughter? I felt dizzy. His daughter? Yeah, pretty girl, about 16? They usually sit by the window. 16. I did the math quickly. I was 31, which meant I spent the rest of the day in Millfield, discreetly asking questions. By evening, I had a clearer picture. Harold Andrews apparently had a second family, a woman named Diane, and a teenage daughter named Sarah. They lived in a modest house on Elm Street, and most people believed Harold was a traveling salesman who came home when he could. I drove back to Westbrook in a daze, pieces falling into place. Mom had discovered Dad's affair and second family years ago. Instead of exposing him, she'd kept his secret and apparently been paying to support them. But why? Blackmail? Fear? Misguided love? When I reached my hotel, I found my father waiting in the lobby. His face was ashen, his hands trembling slightly. We need to talk, he said, his voice unnaturally calm, privately. In my room, he paced nervously while I sat on the edge of the bed, watching him. You went to Millfield today, he stated flatly. Word travels fast. Small towns. He stopped pacing and faced me. What exactly do you think you know? I know you have another family there. I know Mom was paying to support them. I know you and Amanda drained Mom's accounts and changed her will while she was too drugged to understand what was happening. Dad's expression shifted from anxiety to calculated calm. That's quite a story. It's not a story, Dad. It's the truth. He sat heavily in the desk chair. The truth is complicated, Blythe. Yes, I made a mistake many years ago. I was lonely in my marriage. Don't you dare blame Mom, I interrupted, fury rising in my throat. I'm not blaming her. I'm explaining. His tone hardened. I met Diane when things were difficult between your mother and me. It was supposed to be temporary, but then she got pregnant. I was going to leave, but your mother found out and begged me to stay for you girls. We made an arrangement. An arrangement where Mom paid for your second family while you treated her like an afterthought? The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. It wasn't like that. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. The money, most of it, was for Sarah's college fund. Eleanor understood that. The girl deserves a future. And what about Mom's future? What about her right to leave her money to whomever she wanted? Eleanor agreed to the changes in her will. She knew the money needed to go where it would do the most good. I stared at him in disbelief. You're still lying. Mom never would have cut me out completely. Dad stood abruptly. This conversation is over. Stay out of Millfield, and stay out of matters that don't concern you. If you continue digging, I'll make sure everyone in this town knows you abandoned your mother when she needed you most." After he left, I sat in stunned silence. Then I turned to Mom's diary again, flipping to the last entries. What I read broke my heart. I've hidden copies of everything in the safety deposit box. Account numbers, records of Harold's threats, the original will. Blythe will know what to do with them. I hope someday she understands why I kept her at a distance. It was the only way to protect her from Harold's anger. He blames her for keeping me strong all these years. The next morning, I went to the bank and asked about Mom's safety deposit box. With a copy of her death certificate and my ID, I gained access. Inside was everything she promised. Financial records showing years of payments to a D. Jenkins and Millfield. Recordings of arguments between my parents where Dad threatened to ruin my career if Mom didn't comply with his demands, and a copy of Mom's real will dated just 1 month before her death, when Dr. Goldstein had certified she was lucid, leaving her estate equally to Amanda and me. I also found an offshore account number in Dad's name, with a balance of over $200,000. Armed with this evidence, I drove to Ryan's law office. As I approached the building, my phone rang. It was Amanda. "I heard you met with Dad," she said, her voice unusually gentle. "He told me everything, about Millfield, about the money. I had no idea, Blythe. I swear. I wasn't sure if I believed her." "Did you know about the will?" A pause. "I knew it changed. Dad said Mom wanted it that way because you were already successful and didn't need the money. And you believed that?" Another pause. "I wanted to." Her voice cracked. "I found something in Mom's things this morning. Letters she wrote to you but never sent. She was so proud of you, Blythe. She talked about you all the time." My throat tightened. "Amanda, we need to make this right." "I know," she said quietly. "I want to help. Can we meet tomorrow? Just you and me?" I agreed, cautiously optimistic that maybe, just maybe, my sister was finally seeing the truth. The town gazebo, white and pristine against the backdrop of autumn leaves, had been our meeting spot as teenagers. Amanda suggested it for our talk, neutral ground as she called it. I arrived early, watching ducks glide across the nearby pond as I waited. Amanda appeared punctually at noon, looking more like the sister I remembered from childhood, hair in a messy ponytail, minimal makeup, wearing jeans instead of her usual tailored slacks. "Thanks for coming," she said, sitting beside me on the bench. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About everything. Dad. Mom. The money." She fidgeted with a loose thread on her sleeve. "I didn't know about Millfield until yesterday, I swear. But I did know Dad was hiding money somewhere. I found transfer receipts in his desk months ago." I studied her face, trying to gauge her sincerity. "Why didn't you question it?" "Because." She sighed heavily. "Because I needed money too. My gambling got out of control after Mom's diagnosis. It was my escape, I guess. Jackson didn't even know how bad it was until we were facing foreclosure." "So you took from Mom instead of getting help?" Amanda's eyes welled with tears. "I'm not proud of it. I told myself I'd pay it back, that Mom wouldn't need it anyway since she was." She couldn't finish the sentence. "Dying?" I supplied coldly. "I was desperate, Blythe. The bank was calling every day, Jackson was talking about bankruptcy, and the kids needed braces and activities and everything cost so much." She wiped at her eyes. "I found evidence in Mom's room yesterday. Records of Dad's offshore account. If we worked together, we might be able to recover the money." It sounded plausible, even reasonable. My sister, finally coming to her senses, ready to help fix the wrongs she had participated in. But something didn't feel right. "What did the records show exactly?" I asked carefully. "Account numbers. Passwords. Enough to access the funds." I nodded slowly. "And where are these records now?" "At home. I can get them tonight after Jackson takes the kids to soccer." I stood, needing to move as I thought. "I appreciate you telling me all this, Amanda. It couldn't have been easy. So we'll work together? Get the money back?" "Of course," I said with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Family should stick together." As I walked away, I called Ryan immediately. My sister just tried to set me up, I explained. She's working with Dad to get me to attempt to access his offshore account, which would be wire fraud, Ryan noted. A federal offense. Exactly. They're getting desperate. That afternoon, I received a strange text from Valerie, the nurse. Check your email. Sent something important. In my inbox was a video file with the subject line, "Your mother asked me to record this." With trembling fingers, I pressed play. Mom appeared on screen, skeletal and pale but clear-eyed. "Blythe, if you're seeing this, I'm gone, and things have probably gotten messy. I need you to know the truth." She explained how Dad had manipulated and threatened her for years, how the payments to his second family had started as blackmail but continued because she grew to care about the innocent child involved. "I never signed the new will," she stated firmly. "If there's one with my signature, it's forged. I've left evidence in my safety deposit box, and with my real attorney, Michael Winters in Portland. Harold doesn't know about him." I immediately called Michael Winters' office and scheduled an appointment for the next morning. Then I contacted Dr. Goldstein for official documentation about Mom's mental state during her final months. As night fell, I received another call from Amanda. "Did you think about what we discussed?" she asked. "I did. Let's meet tomorrow to go over those records you found." "Perfect. Dad's going out of town for a business meeting, so we'll have plenty of time." After hanging up, I smiled grimly. Dad didn't have business meetings, he was going to Millfield, no doubt. And Amanda was still playing along with their scheme, unaware that I was 10 steps ahead. The next morning, I met with Michael Winters, who confirmed everything Mom had said in the video. The real will was safely filed with his office, and he had affidavits from witnesses confirming Mom's mental competence when she signed it. "Your mother was preparing for this eventuality," he explained. "She knew your father and sister might try something. With Winters' help, I filed formal objections to the fraudulent will and initiated proceedings to freeze the offshore account that Dad believed was still his secret." That afternoon, I was supposed to meet Amanda at her house. Instead, I went to the district attorney's office with all my evidence. Bank records, the video from Valerie, statements from Dr. Goldstein, and documentation from Michael Winters. District Attorney Patricia Coleman listened intently, occasionally taking notes. When I finished, she nodded gravely. "This is troubling, Miss Andrews. Financial elder abuse is a serious crime, as is will forgery. We'll need to investigate further, but you've provided substantial evidence." As I left her office, my phone exploded with texts from Amanda. "Where are you? I've been waiting. Did you change your mind? Hello? We had a plan." I ignored them all and drove to the hotel to pack my things. I was checking out when Jackson appeared in the lobby, looking distraught. "Blythe, we need to talk." "I think I'm done talking to anyone in the family," I replied coldly. "Please. I've been gathering evidence against Amanda and your father for months. I didn't know how bad it was until recently." He handed me a thumb drive. Bank statements, recorded conversations, everything. I couldn't stop them, but I couldn't let them get away with it either. I studied his face, seeing genuine remorse. "Why now, Jackson?" "Because Amanda crossed a line. She and your dad were planning to frame you for financial crimes. I heard them discussing it last night, how they'd get you to access the offshore account, then report you for theft and wire fraud." He ran a hand through his hair nervously. "I can't let them do that to you. And I can't let my kids grow up thinking this is how family treats each other." I took the thumb drive, not entirely trusting him, but willing to examine the evidence. "Thank you, Jackson." "There's one more thing," he added hesitantly. "Your father has been moving money rapidly the past few days. I think he's planning to disappear." I immediately called Ryan and DA Coleman with this information. Within hours, a judge approved an emergency freeze on all accounts associated with Harold Andrews. That evening, I sat in Ryan's office, reviewing Jackson's evidence. It was damning recorded conversations between Dad and Amanda discussing how to manipulate Mom's medication schedule to ensure she was incapacitated during important meetings, plans for changing the will, strategies for getting me out of the picture. "This is even worse than we thought," Ryan said grimly. "Your father wasn't just supporting another family, he was systematically draining your mother's assets for years." I nodded. a cold determination settling over me. And now they'll both answer for it. My phone rang, Dad calling. I answered on speaker. "What have you done?" he demanded, panic evident in his voice. "My accounts are frozen." "Justice," I replied simply. "For Mom?" "You stupid girl," he hissed. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I'll destroy you before I let you ruin everything I've built." "Everything you've stolen, you mean." "It's over, Dad. The DA has everything, the fake will, the evidence of elder abuse, the offshore accounts, everything." A long silence followed. Then, "Amanda told you about the offshore account." "No, Mom did. She documented everything." Another silence. "What do you want?" "I want what's fair. I want justice for Mom. And I want you and Amanda to face consequences for what you did." "I'll implicate Amanda," he said quickly. "It was mostly her idea. I can testify against her for a reduced sentence." The casual betrayal stunned me, though it shouldn't have. Wow. Father of the Year, right there. "Blythe, be reasonable. I'm an old man. I can't go to prison." "You should have thought of that before you stole from your dying wife and tried to frame your daughter." I hung up, feeling strangely calm. The truth was finally coming to light, and soon Mom would have justice. The small conference room at the district attorney's office felt cramped with 6 people inside. D.A. Coleman sat at the head of the table, flanked by her assistant. Ryan sat beside me, while across from us were Dad's attorney, an expensive-looking man in a custom suit, and a forensic accountant hired by the court to trace the stolen funds. "Mr. Andrews is prepared to cooperate fully," the attorney was saying, his tone smoothly professional, "in exchange for immunity from prosecution." D.A. Coleman raised an eyebrow. "That's not on the table, Counselor. The evidence against your client is substantial. The best we can offer is consideration during sentencing in exchange for full restitution and testimony." "My client is 62 years old," the attorney argued. "Any significant sentence would effectively be a life sentence. He should have considered that before committing elder abuse, fraud, forgery, and conspiracy," Coleman replied coolly. I sat quietly, letting the legal professionals handle the negotiation. It had been 3 weeks since I'd confronted Dad, and things had moved quickly. Amanda and Dad had both been arrested and released on bail. The offshore account had been located and frozen. Mom's real will had been validated by the probate court. "What about Amanda Andrews?" Dad's attorney asked. "My client has information about her role that goes beyond what you currently know." My stomach twisted at how easily Dad was willing to throw Amanda under the bus to save himself. "We're in separate discussions with Miss Andrews and her counsel," Coleman said. "If your client has pertinent information, now would be the time to share it." The meeting continued for another hour, with Dad's attorney trying various angles to secure better terms. Throughout it all, I remained silent, my mind drifting to Mom. Would she have wanted this? Criminal charges against her husband and daughter? I had to believe she would have wanted the truth to come out, wanted justice to be served. Afterward, Ryan walked me to my car. "You holding up okay?" I nodded. "Better than I expected, actually. It feels good to finally be fighting for Mom." "You're doing the right thing," he assured me. "What happened to your mother was criminal, and the people responsible should face consequences, family or not." That evening, as I was reviewing more financial documents in my new apartment, I'd decided to stay in Westbrook until everything was resolved. There was a knock at the door. Through the peephole, I saw Amanda, alone and looking disheveled. Against my better judgment, I opened the door. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice small. "That depends. Are you recording this conversation to try to entrap me again?" She flinched. "I deserve that, but no, I'm here alone. Jackson doesn't even know I came." I stepped aside to let her in, keeping a careful distance. Amanda sat on the edge of the sofa, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Dad called me from his attorney's office. He's going to blame everything on me." "Are you surprised?" She laughed bitterly. "I should have seen it coming. He's always saved himself at everyone else's expense." She looked up at me, eyes red-rimmed. I was stupid, Blythe. So stupid. "Yes, you were," I agreed, not ready to offer comfort. "You stole from our dying mother. You tried to frame me for crimes I didn't commit. You forged documents. All for what? Money? It started that way, she admitted. The gambling debts were crushing me, and Dad suggested taking a little from Mom's accounts, just enough to keep the creditors away. But then he wanted more, for his other family, and then more after that. And the will? Amanda stared at her hands. That was Dad's idea, too. He said Mom wasn't thinking clearly anyway, that she'd want to provide for the people who actually took care of her. I convinced myself it was true. You could have come to me for help with your gambling, I said quietly. Instead, you chose this. I was ashamed. And jealous. You were always Mom's favorite. That's not true. It is, she insisted. You were the smart one, the successful one. I was just here. The one who stayed. The one who wasn't special. I sighed, suddenly tired. Mom loved us both, Amanda. Differently maybe, but equally. She kept all your cards and letters, did you know that? In a special box in her closet. I found it, I confirmed. Amanda nodded. I used to look through them sometimes, when she was napping. You wrote her such beautiful things. Her voice broke. I never knew what to say to her. Despite everything, I felt a twinge of sympathy. What do you want from me, Amanda? I don't know. Understanding? Forgiveness? She wiped at her eyes. I can't change what I did, but I can try to make it right. I've decided to plead guilty and testify against Dad. My attorney thinks I can get a reduced sentence with probation if I cooperate fully and pay restitution. And the gambling? I'm in a program now. Twice weekly meetings, counseling. Jackson said it's the only way he'll consider staying married. She looked up at me, vulnerability naked on her face. Do you think Mom would have forgiven me? The question hung in the air between us. After a long moment, I answered honestly, yes. But she would have wanted you to face consequences too. Amanda nodded. I know. She stood to leave. For what it's worth, I am sorry, Blythe. Not just for getting caught, but for everything. You deserved better from your family. After she left, I sat alone in my apartment, turning over the conversation in my mind. Could I ever forgive Amanda? Maybe someday, but not yet. First, justice needed to be served. The next morning, I received a call from Dr. Goldstein. Blythe, I was going through your mother's medical records for the DA, and I found something interesting. Your mother recorded several of her conversations with your father and sister. What? How? Apparently, she had a digital recorder disguised as a medication timer. The audio files were uploaded to her patient portal as symptom diaries. I've turned them over to the district attorney, but I thought you should know. The recordings were damning. Clear discussions between Dad and Amanda about drugging Mom before meetings, plans to change the will, arguments about how much money to take from her accounts. In one particularly chilling conversation, Dad could be heard saying, "Once she's gone, we'll pin the missing money on Blythe. She won't be able to defend herself." D.A. Coleman called that afternoon. These recordings change everything. We're upgrading the charges against both your father and sister. Your father's attorney has already reached out about a plea deal. The news should have made me feel victorious. Instead, I just felt sad. My family had been broken long before Mom died, I just hadn't seen it. That evening, as I walked along the riverfront trying to clear my head, my phone rang with an unknown number. Is this Blythe Andrews? A young female voice asked. Yes. Who's this? My name is Sarah Jenkins. From Millfield. A pause. I think you're my half-sister. My breath caught. How did you get my number? My mom gave it to me. She said you've been asking questions around town, and it's time we talked. Can we meet? I agreed to meet Sarah the next day, at a cafe halfway between our towns. I wasn't sure what I hoped to accomplish, but I needed to see this other part of Dad's life for myself. Sarah was waiting when I arrived, a pretty teenager with Dad's eyes and jawline. Beside her sat an elegant woman in her 40s, Diane Jenkins, I presumed. Thank you for coming, Diane said as I sat down. This isn't easy for any of us. No, it's not, I agreed. But I appreciate your willingness to talk. Sarah studied me openly. You look like the pictures. Pictures? Dad has photos of you. From graduations and stuff. She fidgeted with her napkin. He talks about you a lot. Says you're brilliant. I wasn't prepared for how those simple words would affect me. Dad had photos of me? Talked about me? It didn't align with the man who had tried to frame me for financial crimes. Sarah, Diane, I want to be direct, I said. My father is facing criminal charges for stealing from my mother and manipulating her will. Part of that money went to support you both. Diane nodded, her expression pained. I know. Harold told me everything last week. I had no idea the money was taken from your mother without her knowledge. He always said it was an arranged support agreement that everyone understood. What will happen to us? Sarah asked, fear evident in her young voice. The court will likely require restitution of the stolen funds, I explained gently. But that's not your fault, Sarah. You didn't do anything wrong. But my college fund. We'll figure something out, I promised, surprised by my own words. This girl was an innocent victim in Dad's web of lies, just as I was. As we talked further, I learned that Dad had been part of their lives since before Sarah was born, visiting at least weekly, attending school events, being a father in all the ways he had never been to me and Amanda. It hurt, but it also helped me understand the magnitude of his deception. Before we parted, I gave Sarah my email address. If you ever want to talk, or have questions, or just want to get coffee, I'm here. She smiled shyly. I'd like that. I always wanted a big sister. The irony wasn't lost on me. The next day, I received the news that would finally bring Mom justice. The discovery of a recording she had made just 1 week before her death. In it, Dad could clearly be heard, threatening to ruin my career if she didn't change her will to exclude me. I have friends at the accounting board, he said coldly. One anonymous tip about ethics violations could end her career before it really begins. Is that what you want for your precious Blythe? Mom's weak voice replied, You wouldn't. Try me, Dad challenged. Change the will, Eleanor. It's the only way to protect her. That recording was the final nail in the coffin of Dad's defense. His attorney called Ryan that afternoon to negotiate a plea deal. Justice, it seemed, was finally within reach. All rise. The Court of Common Pleas for Cumberland County is now in session, the Honorable Judge Mary Ann Watkins presiding. I stood with Ryan as the judge entered the courtroom. 6 months had passed since that explosive confrontation in my childhood kitchen, and today marked the culmination of a journey I never wanted to take but couldn't avoid. Dad sat at the defense table, looking older and smaller than I remembered. Amanda was in the row behind him with Jackson, her face pale but composed. In the gallery sat a collection of people whose lives had intersected with this case. Valerie the nurse, Dr. Goldstein, Terry from the bank, and surprisingly Diane and Sarah Jenkins. Today we are here for the sentencing of Harold Andrews and Amanda Prescott, who have both entered guilty pleas, Judge Watkins announced. Before I pronounce sentence, does either defendant wish to make a statement? Dad stood slowly, supported by his attorney. Your Honor, I made terrible mistakes. I betrayed my wife's trust and took advantage of her illness. There's no excuse for what I did. He turned slightly toward me. Blythe, I don't expect forgiveness, but I am truly sorry for the pain I've caused you. It was the first genuine apology I'd heard from him, but it came far too late. Amanda spoke next, her voice trembling. I allowed greed and addiction to override my conscience. I betrayed my mother when she needed me most, and I tried to hurt my sister to cover my crimes. Tears streamed down her face. I will spend the rest of my life trying to make amends, though I know that may never be enough. Judge Watkins then asked if anyone else wished to speak. To my surprise, Sarah Jenkins stood. Your Honor, I didn't know about any of this until recently. Harold Andrews is the only father I've ever known. He made terrible choices, but he has also shown love and kindness to me my entire life. I ask the court to consider mercy in his sentencing. Finally, it was my turn. I approached the podium, my prepared statement forgotten, as I looked at the faces before me, my broken family, the innocent bystanders, the professionals who had helped bring the truth to light. Your Honor, what happened to my mother was a profound betrayal by the people she should have been able to trust most. She spent her final years being manipulated and stolen from, yet she still tried to protect me from my father's threats, my sister from the consequences of her addiction, even my father's second family from financial hardship. I took a deep breath. I don't seek vengeance. I seek justice for my mother and protection for others who might fall victim to similar abuse. I ask the court to ensure that appropriate restitution is made, not just to me, but to fund programs that protect vulnerable seniors from financial exploitation. Judge Watkins nodded thoughtfully. Thank you, Miss Andrews. The court appreciates your perspective. After a brief recess, she returned with her decision. Harold Andrews, this court sentences you to 5 years imprisonment, with 2 years suspended. You will serve a minimum of 3 years. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution of $296,000 to your wife's estate. She turned to my sister. Amanda Prescott, this court sentences you to 3 years imprisonment, suspended in favor of 5 years probation, contingent upon your continued participation in gambling addiction treatment and completion of 1,000 hours of community service with elderly populations. You are also ordered to pay restitution of $98,000 to your mother's estate. The sentencing concluded. People began filing out of the courtroom. I stood alone for a moment, feeling not triumph but a quiet sense of closure. Mom had finally received justice. Outside, Ryan waited for me. You okay? I nodded. I think I will be. In the months that followed, I made decisions that surprised even myself. Using my portion of Mom's recovered estate, I established the Eleanor Andrews Foundation for Elder Protection, providing resources to help prevent financial exploitation of seniors. I also decided to stay in Westbrook, at least temporarily, opening a small accounting practice, specializing in financial protection for vulnerable populations. Amanda served no jail time, but worked diligently at her community service, eventually becoming an advocate for gambling addiction awareness. Our relationship remained complicated, neither fully reconciled nor completely estranged. We were finding a new way to be sisters, built on honesty rather than the family myths we'd grown up with. Jackson and their children became unexpected allies. The kids, my niece and nephew, spent time with me regularly, and I discovered the joy of being the aunt who took them for ice cream and helped with science projects. Most surprisingly, I developed a genuine relationship with Sarah Jenkins. At 16, she was bright, curious, and entirely innocent of her father's crimes. We met for coffee every few weeks, sometimes with Diane, sometimes just the two of us. She called me Big Sis with an easy affection that both warmed and wounded my heart. I visited Dad only once in prison. The conversation was awkward, stilted by the weight of everything between us. When I asked why he had kept photos of me, talked about me to his other family, he looked genuinely confused. "You're my daughter," he said simply. "I've always been proud of you. But you tried to destroy me," I reminded him. He looked away. I was desperate, trapped in the web of lies I'd created. I convinced myself it was the only way out. I didn't visit again. Some relationships couldn't and shouldn't be repaired. 1 year after the courtroom sentencing, I sat in the office of my new practice, reviewing client files. Ryan entered with coffee, now a regular occurrence. Our friendship had evolved into something deeper, built on mutual respect and shared values. "I found something you should see," he said, placing an envelope on my desk. "The executor of your mother's estate discovered it in a safe deposit box at another bank. It was supposed to be delivered to you on the 1-year anniversary of the legal proceedings." Inside was a letter in Mom's handwriting, dated just weeks before her death. "My dearest Blythe, if you're reading this, then you've discovered the truth and fought for justice, just as I knew you would. I'm sorry for keeping you at a distance all these years. I thought it would protect you from your father's manipulation, but I realize now that I should have trusted you with the truth. I've watched you grow into a woman of remarkable strength and integrity. Your determination to live honestly and ethically has been my greatest joy. When the time comes for you to rebuild after all this pain, remember that family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's the connections we choose that heal us most completely. I've left instructions for a portion of my estate to be used for a purpose you'll determine. I trust you to create something meaningful from this painful chapter." Know that I am with you always, proud of the woman you've become. All my love. Mom. Tears streamed down my face as Ryan squeezed my shoulder gently. She knew, I whispered. She knew what would happen and believed I could handle it. She was right, Ryan said softly. In the months that followed, I expanded the Eleanor Andrews Foundation, partnering with local law enforcement to develop programs identifying potential elder abuse. Amanda, now 2 years into her probation and recovery, volunteered regularly, using her experience to help others avoid similar paths. Sarah graduated high school and, with a combination of scholarships and assistance from the foundation, began college. She stopped using the Andrews name, legally changing her surname to her mother's, a decision I respected and supported. On a crisp autumn day, much like the one when this journey began, I stood in front of my mother's grave, placing fresh flowers against her headstone. You were right, Mom, I said quietly. Family is who we choose. I thought about the family I was building now, Ryan, who had become my partner in life as well as work. Sarah, the half-sister I never knew I needed. My niece and nephew, who brought unexpected joy. Even Amanda, slowly earning back a place in my life through genuine change. True family, I'd learned, is built on honesty and love, not blood ties. Justice sometimes requires painful truths to come to light, and our integrity is ultimately what defines us. As I turned to leave, I noticed a small stone someone had placed on Mom's headstone, a tradition meant to show that the deceased is remembered. I smiled, knowing that Mom's legacy lived on not just in memories, but in the positive changes her story had created in so many lives, including mine. Have you ever had to stand up for what's right, even when it meant confronting family? I hope my story reminds you that the truth, however painful, is always worth fighting for. If this resonated with you, please comment below with your thoughts. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to hear more stories, and share with someone who might need to hear that they're not alone in their family struggles. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most beautiful new beginnings.